cuttings can be a really difficult thing, and we have a man who who does cuttings really well, and that's Jamin. And again, he's going to talk generally about doing cutting, so what to look for in a cutting, what to look for in your material, what's the best way of doing a cutting, what's the best way of putting it in, and he's got some more difficult ones here. I can see he's got some persunias out here, which are always difficult. So, and again, this is about asking questions, so if you've got specific questions that you want to ask him, then by all means, go for it. And if you know Jamin, you know he's not unable to talk. So
you've all got four legs on your chairs. You might have three after I've finished.
So if you want to get if it's difficult to see, then we can get people around here as well. But hopefully this will be people can see it as well.
I've got some local stuff here too. I'm Jamin. If anyone doesn't know me, been around for years, and we're here to talk about some cuttings. I want to start with the timing when you do cuttings. The number one rule I use is flowering, and the new shoot after the flowering is your best material. So usually the spring. Originally cuttings were done, especially natives, were done during the February months, February, January. We find with our indigenous stuff it's spring, summer, because you want to get them through to the next season that you want to be selling them when it's planting. So, and we're only growing tube stock. Whereas they would be growing 6-inch pots, so they want to be doing them in February, so they get them through a whole season, they've got them. You're looking for softness or hardness of cuttings when you start. If anyone's got any questions as I go through these points I'll be talking about, please yell them out. So when you're looking for a cutting, I've just brought some Branxias in. You're looking for the hardness of the actual cutting. If it springs back, that's usually generally a good sign that material's ready. With Banksias, it's this time of year, so that's why I brought these in. These are always April, May, up to June. I've got my secateurs here. When you do them, you'll feel they spring back. You'll find the spot. With a Banksia, we use a method using your thumb, and they should just click off around the stem. If they're not clicking, if they're ripping, that material, I'll leave this material up there because this is ripping because it's too soft. So I'll do some of these and just leave it up there so you can see that later. There is some better material on this stem here. This one's a lot better. So basically clicking around with a Banksia round the stem like that. You want to leave a little bit, and your last cut will be, oh my God, I've got that in front of the camera. Sorry. Your last cut, no one's going to see that. Using your secateurs, make sure you have the anvil side upwards, and your cut is like that, and that's your cutting. You dip it in gel. Sorry, I don't have any gel with me. I should have prepared that as well. A light dip in gel. When you're using a gel or a powder, don't smother the thing in it. Make sure you just do the tip of the cutting. You want that and leave it for a little while before it goes in. So we usually leave it up, off, on something to let it actually take it in, then put it in.
How long is it for?
Couple of minutes. So prepare yourself 10 or 15 that you're going to put in a row. So you've got your tray and put them straight in a tray. Once you've done that, then prepare another lot. With the hormone, you want to use a semi-hardwood. I like mixing it down with a bit of water too, so I won't use it at full strength. And when you're doing soft and harder cuttings during those years, you really don't need to use hormone for a lot of the things. I use it for proteaceae. It seems to promote the roots quicker at that time of year. But a lot of the time when you're in spring, a lot of plants are in growth, and if you actually get the cutting at the right time, it should strike without hormone. There is proof there that it roots better, but the time taking to put the plant into the hormone to get them, especially if you're doing large batches, into the cutting material in spring is the time that it actually doesn't strike. So something like a Banksia, if you go and get Banksia cuttings and you've got 100 here, and it's taken you an hour to get out and get the cuttings, you brought them back, and you say, I've got to get them in, I've got to do this with every one of them. You've got to keep them moist, obviously, before you get them in, but they're going to take another hour to do. So with softer stuff, if you're doing that as well, you're going to find you're going to be getting low strike rates because of the length of time to get them into the prop mix and get them into your cutting house. Thank you. He's brought me some. So all you do, just the tip with a Banksia, just the tip like that, and that's it. And leave it on something. I usually have a little piece of timber and I leave them up like that with the Banksias, and then straight in. Do a row at a time, then do another prepare. It's much better if you're doing, and a couple of people do them as well. So if you're doing cuttings, 2 people equal 3. Someone's doing the cuttings, the other one's putting them in. There's no stop starting. With the length of time, I'm saying the length of time to do the cuttings, yeah, you've really got to make sure what you go out and get, especially if you get material off-site, you're not out there too long. If you're out there for 3 hours and you've got cuttings sitting there and we better have coffee and that before we have it, your cutting strike rate is going to be very low. I expect to get something around 90% with Banksia if you can get them in, especially this time of year with a cooler day, going out to get them. You should be able to get those type of results. Now the media, does everyone use perlite and core peat? Does anyone use sand at all? Sharp sand?
Oh, just before you go a little
Yeah.
bit further, do you wound or scrape the bottom?
You can wound. I've found, I'm going to do some Pesunias. I show you can wound those. You can wound Banksias, but I've found if you get the material at the right time and the leaves click and come up, and I'll show you later on, when this is done, I'll show you as individual if you want to see it clicking. But you'll feel it, and just getting that material with the tip cutting strikes really well. The wounds, all you're doing with a wound is opening another spot for it to rot. Some species and plants do want to be wounded. I mean, some of the Proteaceae, they definitely do Proteas with a wound, and they stick it straight in the tube. They want the extra, because the cuttings are so thick. But with our cutting, because our cuttings have got like that, they're not very wide, the circumference is not that big. The wound that you're going to put on that, you're going to take half the plant off it to do a wound on that. I will show you with Petunia later, actually wounding does help a little bit. They're still an intrigue in themselves. I mean, I know some of you's had Petunia down, and they're very funny. What I've done with those is I ask if someone hasn't done cuttings before, I get them to do them, because you never know what you're going to get. But I've got some material with these ones to show you the material that I've taken in the past that actually has worked, and I've got really good results.
Just before putting in the potting medium or the hormone, do you actually trim the leaves, chop all the leaves off?
I wouldn't off Banksias, any of this stuff. Don't do that. Any wounds on the leaves actually help with any moisture getting in and fungal diseases getting in. The only time I'll cut leaves is during the warmer months, and it's only so you can get more cuttings in a tray. So something like a coria, you don't need to cut coria leaves in half this time of year if you're doing them now. But if you do them in the warmer months, cutting them in half just to give a bit of airflow through the trays. If you're trying to get 120 cuttings in a normal sized tray, so 12 by 10 rows, you want to cut them in half just to give them that airflow through there. A lot of the things I wouldn't cut in half, so I'm saying it actually, all it does is promote the moisture and the fungal diseases getting into the actual cutting. You just made another wound in it. There's enough wounds in it down the bottom without putting more in it. Do all of you use misters? Is that your trait with a leaf? Because if you're doing that, that's the thing it does. That's because it's constantly getting wet. You could do it if you cut in half and you were just putting under glass or under a plastic bag. It'd probably be all right. You wouldn't find as much rotting with that. With the other one, with the coria, the only time I will cut in half is when I've got newer shoots like that, and I want to do a tip cutting for coria like that. Do it up there so they can see it. I would sometimes I'll cut the top leaves in half there just to stop them from falling over, just to take the weight out of them, because you want to leave the tip in a lot of the times taking the tip out, especially in the summer months, again, it's that extra spot where water gets in, it can rot straight down the stem. So if you leave it in, it just take the leaves in half so they're not flopping over. If you've got that type of material, because you really want the cutting material, you want the length of it's about 5 to 8 centimetres long. Anything smaller, and you're not giving the plant a chance, especially as I was saying, circumference of the actual cutting. You want a cutting that's got, you can fit in your fingers, you can roll in your fingers. Anything skinny is not going to strike. So if you take material like, I've got some Coria Lawrenceana here. The normal new shoot is there. That's the width of it. If you're taking these little skinny side shoots, that material is not going to strike very well. It's too skinny. There's really no hormone in the plant. And I'll go into that next with way you do cuttings of Corias to start with. When you're taking the cutting of a Coria, I don't know if you can see all that. The stem goes down to a skinnier part there. It starts off thicker where the node is. Cutting just where it starts to thin out there, that's where the hormone in the plant is. You're inducing it to grow from there. So taking it there, this is all I do, and take the leaves up, putting it straight in like that. That's the type of material you want. That's going to strike, and I don't even dip something like that. If I'm doing it right, if I get material like that springs back. So that'll strike without, if you've got misters and you're using a good mix, a good sand or perlite mix. My mixes, I normally use 8 to 1 of perlite to core peat or sphagnum peat, if you're using any of those two. And usually use a tray, but I find that with some of the harder things, using a pot with a bit of depth, even if the depth is much lower than what your actual cutting is, it actually leaves moisture in the soil. Things don't dry, especially with bottom heat. The problem we have with bottom heat is we've got the cuttings in the tray, and it's about that far off the bottom heat, so it's drying where the top isn't getting wet enough. So, and then to compensate, we turn the sprinklers on more. If you've seen cases here in the Malay, it's really wet in there. The problem is it creates a lot of rotting. You're trying to keep the media wet, but it's not actually what you should be doing. Is you should be actually keeping the leaves wet, and the media should be staying at the same a constant moisture level. So higher pots to do cuttings in is really well. I like using the squat 6s, and they're about 10 centimetres high, and that gives you that actual drainage and protection from drying out from the bottom heat, and the heat will still go up there. You'll still get warmth in there. It'll radiate through the air gaps in there instead of actually direct contact. The secateurs, everyone, you all use good sharp secateurs. I've actually changed on my blades. I usually use a fairly blunt pair. It's just with an edge on it, because I like my fingers. Really, you just got to be careful when you do lots of cuttings. It's you make sure your hand stays still. And when I do cuttings, get another piece though, I hold the cutting and move the secateurs around to where I want it, so I know where my hand is. I don't move my hand around. I hold the cutting and move the secateurs around to where I need to do it, so I know where my hand is. If I'm doing this all over the place, your fingers are everywhere, and that's what gets cut. I've seen it happen, and it's not pretty. Years ago, and I went, okay, I've got to learn from that. So make sure the way you do cuttings, and you're in the moment, you've got to be there. You've stop now and again when you're doing it, and think about what you're doing and keep going. Don't just pound through hundreds of cuttings, because you're gonna do it. I don't know if everyone here has had. I've had nicks, and it's when you're thinking about something else. Oh, there's hot dogs later on. I'm having them. We'll go on to cutting types too with similar plants. So we've got Corias, and Corias have got opposite leaves. So opposite leaves have usually got the same rules. I use anyway, with that just about a centimetre below the node. If you're cutting right at the node level like that, you're not going to strike it. It doesn't throw roots out around the node. It calluses down on that lower part of the stem, and that's where it throws roots out from with the opposite leaves. I don't know if I brought any. What have you got over here, Daniel? Got anything with alternate leaves? You got a gardenia?
You can use this stuff here if you want. Some
That's the Vissies I got.
stuff.
Sorry, I didn't even think about bringing one of those. We'll pretend this is. It basically has. It's got alternate leaves. With alternate leaves, when you take an alternate leaf cutting, you take it about the same amount under the node. But difference with the alternate leaves, usually they'll root from up the stem. Especially gardenia, they'll throw roots. So if you've got that about the centimetre below the node, you're going to get good strike rate. And what you want to do with your cuttings is you want to do that with all of them so you get an even crop of plants that are striking at the same time. If you've got cuttings that are all over the place, obviously you're going to get some, you pot some up and you put them back and then you pot them up and you get those small amounts. It's not what you want. You want to be producing, that's what I was saying with the tray. 120 is usually my amount that I'll get into a tray, and the reason is over 100. That gives you two. Most people are using trays with 50 per tray. That gives you 2 trays. That means you've got one good one, and the one left over is your one you top up, your good one that you put in sales, or it goes in an order. There's the good one, and you've got your leftovers you can use for sales later. So do them in batches like that, and making sure you're doing the cuttings similar will give you those numbers so it's more efficient. The worst thing is putting cuttings back. They've been disturbed. They don't usually the strike rate goes down hugely from you're getting 90%. We've even found with the Banksias, get 90%, and the 10% that don't strike, you put them back, and you're lucky if there's 10% of those that strike. They might as well be thrown away. One thing we implemented at Counterbark this year, we were doing, it was a shocker, with something like gardenia that's easy. Instead of putting back 10, throw them away and do another batch. It's just as quick. It's just as easy to do another batch of 100 as to put back 10 and try and repot them later, because you get these little batches everywhere. I don't know if anyone has. So I know they have problems here with it because Chrissy keeps telling me there's 10 of this here and 5 of them over there. Get rid of them. Don't do that. Make sure you're growing in batches that actually suit the nursery. So if you've got boxes of 50 out there, well, you want 10 more. What do you do with them? If you've only got 10 of them, you put them out for sale and someone goes, I want 12. I've only got 10. So do them in proper batches. So we've gone through alternate. The opposite, similar as I was showing you before with the opposite leaves. I've got some, found some Coprosma hurtella. Very similar thing. Just nice clean cut around the node and just below the stem. This cutting's a bit skinny for Coprosma hurtella. I like them a little bit bigger than that. The actual circumference of the stem, but it's all right. It may strike, but that's the rule with those. Again, you can dip that if you like. Something like that's a little bit harder. Again, just let it dry for a couple of minutes, then put them in. Again, if you do that, put it straight in, wash it straight off. It hasn't got a chance for the plant to actually take it off. The other thing is with cuttings, you're doing the material. Your last cut should be your last cut before you do it. They're like flower arranging. You see when they do flower arranging, they cut and put it straight in the water because the stem will suck the water straight up. The same goes with the cutting. If you leave it and it's been sitting there for 10 minutes before you put it in, it's dried out there. It's gone in. It's already gone backwards, so it's going to take a lot for it to actually strike. The end of around the cambium layer at the base has started to dry out. So it is good with the gel. That'll stop that. It won't dry out with the gel on it. But if you're doing other things like gardenias, I was saying, the time, you do not need to dip gardenias and that. You will get a little bit better strike rate, but the time taking to dip them all than not do them and put them in is a huge difference between in them. We've gone through alternate leaves. Has anyone got any questions of anything else? I'm sorry if I think I'm through quick. You could have more of my time, Daniel. I'll fit you back up here.
There's some Grevillea here.
Okay.
And
Okay. Let's do some of these.
Serralata.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's tricky. With that's tricky. What you want. This is not materially used. Okay. I'll just show you. It's very soft. What you want is the new that shoot there, and as as it buds and just before it's going to throw out the new shoots, that's when you take the cutting. And the stem, it should pull down very easy at that stage. Where, is there any impact? I should have brought some impactors up. So it's very similar. You'll know where the striking material of the cutting is by where it just, the leaves just fall away very easy without repping the stem. And you'll just cut through there. This is almost hardwood, this cutting. It'll strike, but that with the woodier stuff, it's very slow. And usually they'll sit there for ages, the most strike. I'm saying, what you want them in winter, they put on that new shoot, and then it hardens off, and they've got the next one coming out, which is those new shoots there. And before they throw them out and they're still a bud, that's when you do the cutting, because what it does is it forces the plant, I've got to grow roots to support my new shoots coming out. I've had huge success with that in the past. The other, with them too, material lower on the pot, lower on the plant, lower down, like this is coming down, that's younger growth. This is older. Okay, this is older stuff, that's younger down there. So anything coming down from the base there, lower the plant, like this one, is going to strike much easier than anything you take from up the top of a plant. You want lower material, so the lower you can go down, the better. And the best attotrichyes we get, especially after fire, if they've burnt the area and they all reshoot up, those are the shoots you really want. They strike really easy. I know probably a lot of us had problems with this. Well, I know I've had a lot of problems with this year. Bottom heat is essential with this too. You've got to have bottom heat with cuttings like this. The grevilleas,
so can I just interrupt? So it's that top bit that you want, but
Yeah.
that one's not big enough, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
you want this shoot about 5, 6, 7 centimetres long, with the bud actually formed.
They're
the
hard
new
to
buds.
find. Have you tried to find? They're really hard to find.
I know, but that's the timing. When we go back to timing of cuttings, so I didn't do much of timing of cuttings. Your timing is when that material is ready, when the best time. Round flowers, yes, and when the material looks good, and your timing for when you're selling them. So if this plant takes you a year to grow, and the perfect planting time is May, then you're looking for the cuttings that time of year, somewhere around there. If this plant takes 6 months to grow, and you do the cuttings in May, you're selling them at Christmas. What do you want them at Christmas for? You've got to go, okay, we want them then. So go back 6 months, it's October, November, you want to try and get the cutting. So something like Hybertia that you've struck in February, they're fantastic. They look magnificent, the cuttings, but you're going to have to hang on to them over summer. If that's fine and you're building the numbers up and you can take those cuttings off the tube stock in spring, then do that. They grow really well over that time. Usually we grow something like Hybertia in the summer months because it strikes then, puts the new shoot out, and you've got it in the autumn months to sell straight away. You don't have to hang on it for a full year. You don't want to be watering over summer.
Temperature control versus non-temperature control?
Of what's that?
Any of the cuttings? Yeah, we put a cutting in a temperature controlled room as opposed to just having it open to the atmosphere.
Well, you do. That's what you've got a hot house, or you've got glass with. If you're doing it in a poly box, I used to do it in a poly box with glass over the top, and even that keeps the temperature at a constant temperature. It's not going up and down all the time. With your heat bed, if you've got a prop house and you've got the heat bed, that should keep the temperature even in the house as well from dropping down to really cold. But the cold isn't the worst thing for cuttings. A lot of cuttings like Astroloma, which I was happy it wasn't there because I didn't have material of that, really needs the first frost to harden up the cutting like conifers do. When they do conifer cuttings, they do them in July because they wait till the frost, and then they take the heels and they're hardened up and they strike. Astroloma is very similar. It needs that cold to harden up the little cutting, and it strikes like that. That's all right, I'm used to that. I don't have one. I'm the only one here who doesn't have a phone. So with the grevillea, this is really good material. It's been the wrong time of year to do them, because as I said, you do them now, you're hanging on to them over summer. But if you've only got small amounts of this plant and you want to build your numbers up, doing cuttings of rarer plants now is the way to go, because then in spring you take your cuttings off your tube stock. And pot grown culture seems that the cuttings do a lot better, especially something like a Pacris. I've found growing a Pacris into pots, growing them on in pots and taking the cutting off your pots, they strike really well. Whereas you go out and get them off out of reserves, you get them back and you have really mixed results. You can have the same cutting material, that one struck and that one didn't. What was the difference? And it's just because the plants out there are different and they're not used to